The camera drifts over the shining crystal towers of Velros Prime, a world of beauty and peace. Sunlight dances across floating bridges and glass-like spires. From above, the capital city looks calm, too calm for what is coming. For 3,000 years, the Vini had known only peace. They believed in reason, art, and knowledge. Their people had no armies, only scholars and engineers. But now the sky was changing. Inside the council chamber, Ambassador Teal stood by the tall window, his hands moving quickly over a glowing console. Data flowed before his eyes. Numbers, signals, warnings. His voice was low, tense. "The Corvin fleet is still coming," he said. "And it's growing larger." Across the room, General Kren, a broad and stern Vini, looked up from the tactical map. "Confirmed," he said. "Over 1,700 ships, all marked with Corvin symbols. They'll reach our system in 2 days." The room went silent. The other council members turned toward the holographic map in the center of the chamber. It showed their bright world surrounded by a thin ring of defense satellites and shields. It looked strong, but everyone knew it was not enough. The Corvin Empire had destroyed dozens of worlds with smaller fleets. Wherever they went, cities burned and survivors were taken as slaves. No one ever resisted them for long. "Have we heard anything from the Galactic Council?" asked Counselor Nora, her voice trembling. Teal shook his head slowly. "They refuse to interfere. They say it's a territorial dispute and not their concern." A heavy silence filled the chamber. These were people who had spent centuries solving problems through peace. Now peace had abandoned them. General Kren slammed his hand on the table. "So they'll let us die? The Great Galactic Council hides while the Corvin take another world." No one answered. Teal turned toward the communication station. "Send a broadcast," he said quietly. "Every channel. Every frequency." The young technician looked uncertain. "To whom, sir?" "To anyone who can hear us." The message went out across the stars, a cry for help in the darkness. "This is Ambassador Teal of Velros Prime. Our world is under threat by the Corvin Empire. We beg for aid. Any species who hears this message, please help us." Hours passed. No reply. The stars outside their window remained cold and silent. Then suddenly, a signal blinked. "Sir," the technician said, eyes wide, "we're getting a response." Teal's heart jumped. "From who?" "It's strange," the technician said. "It's coming from a system called Sol. The sender identifies themselves as humans. From a planet called Earth." Murmurs filled the chamber. None of the council members had ever heard of humans before. "Are they part of the Galactic Council?" Nora asked. The technician checked his console. "No, ma'am. According to records, they made first contact only 6 months ago. A developing species from a Class 12 world." General Kren frowned. "Class 12? That's a death world. How did they even survive long enough to build ships?" Teal leaned closer. "What did they say?" The technician read the message aloud. "This is Captain Blake of the human ship Dauntless. We received your distress call. Request permission to send a small vessel to assess your situation." The council stared at one another in disbelief. General Kren laughed bitterly. "Humans? From a death world? Primitive species playing hero? Their ships use metal hulls. They'll melt before reaching orbit." Counselor Nora whispered, "But we have no one else." Teal looked at the display again. The Corvin fleet was closer now, dark ships shaped like blades cutting through space. Each one could level a city. He turned back to the council. "If there's even a chance they can help us, we must answer." Kren shook his head. "We'll be trading one disaster for another." Teal ignored him and spoke into the transmitter. "This is Velros Prime. Permission granted, Captain Blake." For a few moments only static replied. Then came a rough human voice, strong, confident. "Acknowledged. We'll be there soon. Hold on." Something in that voice made Teal pause. It wasn't arrogance. It was something else, something dangerous but calm. It sounded like a species that had seen death and learned to master it. The council continued to argue, but Teal barely heard them. He watched the holographic display, the Corvin fleet crawling closer with every second. His mind was filled with one thought: who are these humans? Outside, the first Corvin scouts entered the system, scanning Velros Prime from orbit. The alarms began to sound. "Sir," the communication officer cried out. "New contact detected." "Another Corvin ship?" Teal asked. The officer's voice shook. "No, sir. It's them. The humans, they've already launched." The holographic display zoomed out, showing a small dark object moving fast through space. Its engines burned red, brighter than any ship they had ever seen. General Kren whispered, That's their vessel? Teal watched the human ship, dauntless, cutting through the darkness like a spear of fire. A chill ran through him. He didn't know if they were saviors or something far worse. The stars shimmered as the human ship crossed into Velros space. And so, the narrator's voice says low and steady, the Deathworlders came. The stars above Velros Prime shimmered faintly as the alien world waited for its end. In the council chamber, silence ruled. Every heartbeat, every breath sounded louder than before. The great holographic screen showed two things, the Corvin Armada drawing closer and a tiny new signal entering the system. That signal belonged to the humans. Ambassador Teal stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the display. There it was, a small ship, dark and sharp, moving at impossible speed. Compared to the massive Corvin fleet, it was nothing more than a grain of dust. But it was coming straight toward Velros Prime, without fear. Open a channel, Teal said quietly. A moment later the screen flickered to life. The image was grainy, filled with static. Then a human face appeared, a man with sharp eyes, short dark hair, and a calm expression that carried no panic. This is Captain Blake of the Dauntless, the voice said. Velros Prime, we've received your signal. Teal blinked. The voice sounded even more commanding now that it came through the speakers. This is Ambassador Teal of the Viney Council. Captain Blake, we are honored. Blake interrupted politely but firmly. Ambassador, let's skip the formalities. We've analyzed your situation. That Corvin fleet is huge. You've got about 40 hours before full contact. Correct. Teal hesitated. Yes, that is correct. Understood, Blake said. We'll need access to your orbital data, planetary defense grid, and anything you know about Corvin ship design. General Kren, standing behind Teal, frowned. With all due respect, Captain, that's military data. We can't share that with an unknown species. Blake's eyes narrowed slightly. General, with all due respect, if you don't share it, your planet will be dust in 2 days. The line went silent for a moment. Teal studied the human captain's face. No arrogance, no fear. Just cold, focused determination. The kind you saw in someone who'd faced death many times before. Finally, Teal nodded. You'll have full access. Good, Blake replied. We're sending 2 more ships from our task group. They'll arrive in 6 hours. In the meantime, we'll deploy observation drones around your planet. Observation? Asked Counselor Nora, confused. You intend to study the Corvin? Blake almost smiled. Something like that. We prefer to know what we're about to kill. The council members exchanged worried glances. Kill. This species spoke about war as if it were a science. When the connection ended, General Kren turned to Teal, whispering, They're mad. Their technology is weak, their fleet is tiny. They'll die with us. Teal didn't reply. He looked out the great window where the first line of Viney defense satellites glowed softly against the darkness. Something deep inside him whispered that the humans were not what they seemed. Hours later, the first human landing craft broke through the atmosphere. A glowing streak of fire cut across Velros sky before slowing with bright blue thrusters. It descended toward the capital spaceport, landing with a heavy metallic thud. Hundreds of Viney citizens gathered, staring from behind safety barriers. They had never seen a ship made of solid metal, marked with dark gray plating and burned scars. The door hissed open and 3 armored figures stepped out. Their suits were black, scratched and heavy with strange weapons fixed to their arms. The lead figure removed his helmet, Captain Blake himself. The crowd fell silent. The air seemed heavier around them. Humans were taller than most Viney, their faces rougher, their eyes sharp and alert, like predators constantly watching for danger. Ambassador Teal approached slowly with a welcoming gesture. Captain Blake, he said, on behalf of Velros Prime, thank you for coming. Blake nodded once. We'll do what we can, Ambassador. My team will begin analysis immediately. Teal looked curious. Analysis of what? Your planet's weak points, Blake said calmly. If the Corvin land troops, we'll make sure they regret it. The humans moved like soldiers even when they weren't fighting. Every motion had purpose. Their armor looked old, scratched but tested. These were beings shaped by survival, not luxury. General Kren finally spoke up. Captain, your weapons look primitive. Do you really believe you can stand against a Corvin war fleet? Blake's expression didn't change. We fought worse. You just don't know about it. What could be worse than the Corvin? Kren asked. Blake looked up at the red sky and said quietly, home. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of that single word settled on everyone's hearts. That night, the skies over Velros Prime filled with motion. The Dauntless released dozens of metallic drones that spread out in perfect formation. They glowed faintly blue as they vanished into the clouds. At the same time, the human Marines worked across the defense stations, upgrading targeting systems, rerouting energy grids, and muttering to themselves in their rough, clipped language. Teal watched them from a distance. How do they know so much about combat? Nora whispered beside him. Teal's eyes followed one Marine as he adjusted a cannon mount by hand, strength enough to lift something 5 times his size. Because, Teal said softly, it's what they were made for. In the orbit above, the Corvin scouts began to detect new signals, faint energy spikes moving fast but unpredictably. The Corvin commander growled in confusion. Report. What are those objects? The officer frowned. Unknown, sir. Small, metallic, they appear to be analyzing our positions. The commander bared his sharp teeth. Destroy them. But when their cannons fired, the drones vanished, moving faster than expected. Within minutes, every Corvin scanner was flooded with false readings. Their systems glitched. For the first time, the hunters were being watched. Back on the Dauntless, Captain Blake stood before a glowing holographic map of the Corvin formation. His second officer, Lieutenant Harper, turned to him. They're big, sir. But sloppy. Overconfident. Blake nodded slowly. That's good. Let them think we're weak. He turned toward the planet below. Velros Prime has 36 hours left. Prep all weapons. When the main fleet arrives, I want them to see what a Deathworlder response looks like. Harper smirked. With pleasure, sir. Far below, Ambassador Teal looked up at the night sky. The human ship was a faint star above the clouds, unmoving but burning bright. For the first time in days he felt something strange, hope mixed with fear. He didn't know what the humans would do when the Corvin came. But something told him that when they acted, the galaxy would remember it forever. The silence of space broke with the arrival of war. The Corvin fleet appeared from the darkness like a living shadow, a storm of black metal cutting across the stars. Their ships were shaped like blades, cold and deadly, each one glowing red from reactor heat. At the command ship's bridge, Warlord Drax leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as Velros Prime came into view, a beautiful blue-green world shining beneath crystal clouds. Another weak planet, he growled. We'll take it before sunset. His second-in-command bowed. Their defenses are minimal, Warlord. They won't last an hour. Drax smiled, showing sharp teeth. Then we'll give them mercy through death. On Velros Prime the alarm screamed. The council chamber shook as the first Corvin destroyers entered orbit. Red lights flashed through every corridor. Ambassador Teal stood in front of the central display, his voice shaking. They're here. Outside, people looked up at the sky. It was filled with falling fire. Dozens of red streaks lit the clouds as enemy ships descended. Panic spread through the city. Families ran for the underground shelters. The air buzzed with fear. General Kren shouted orders. Activate shields. Power the orbital batteries. All defense satellites, fire on my mark. But before he could finish, a voice came through the speakers, steady and calm. This is Captain Blake. Ambassador Teal, we see your situation. Do not engage the Corvin fleet yet. Teal frowned. Not engage? But they're almost above the city. Trust us, Blake replied. Just keep your people safe. We'll handle the rest. Kren's eyes widened. Handle the rest? There are over 1,000 enemy ships. Teal's voice trembled. Captain, you can't. But the human had already cut the channel. In orbit, the Dauntless and its 2 companion ships drifted silently, engines cold, hidden among the shadows of Velros moons. Inside the bridge, Captain Blake stood with arms folded. The room was dark except for the red glow of tactical screens. Corvin formation confirmed, said Lieutenant Harper. They're spreading out. Perfect for what we planned. Blake nodded. Good. Initiate blackout. Launch the swarm. Moments later, hundreds of tiny black pods shot out from the human ships, invisible against the cold vacuum. The Corvin scanners didn't notice. To them it looked like debris. But each pod carried something far worse. Automated railgun drones guided by human AI. They drifted silently toward the enemy fleet. On the Corvin flagship, Warlord Drax watched the hologram with satisfaction. Begin bombardment, he ordered. Erase their sky. The first Corvin cannons fired. Beams of plasma ripped through the clouds. Entire sections of Velros atmosphere burned. Shockwaves rolled across the surface. But then, the Corvin's forward ships began exploding. One by one, bright flashes tore through their formation. Metal fragments scattered in every direction. "Report," shouted Drax. "Unknown attack, Warlord. We can't see the source." A second later, another explosion ripped through the flank. Then another. Within 30 seconds, 20 Corvin vessels were gone, torn apart by something unseen. "Impossible," Drax roared. "Find them." But there was nothing to find. The drones were invisible, hiding in radar shadows, firing from perfect angles. Their railguns spat molten metal slugs at hypersonic speed. No energy beams, no heat signatures. Just silent destruction. On the Dauntless, Harper smiled. "Their sensors can't track kinetic weapons. They're blind." Blake's voice was calm. "Keep hitting the lead ships. Target command and communication relays." "Yes, sir." Each word he spoke sent death across space. Down on Velros Prime, the people watched the sky in awe. The red lights of enemy ships were vanishing one after another. The thunder in the heavens was real, explosions echoing like gods fighting above the clouds. Teal stood on the balcony, unable to believe what he was seeing. "What are they doing?" General Kren stared upward, his usual confidence replaced by shock. "They're winning." In orbit, the Corvin fleet broke formation. Ships turned wildly, firing at shadows. Their plasma beams hit nothing. Every time they moved, another human drone struck from a new direction. Warlord Drax slammed his fist on the console. "They're using primitive projectiles. Who fights with metal bullets in space?" The officer's voice shook. "The humans do, sir." Then the Dauntless moved. Its engines flared bright blue as it came out of hiding. The main cannons extended from its hull, simple barrels, no glow, no energy buildup. The Corvin ships turned their weapons toward it, confident this small vessel would be easy prey. "Target locked," Harper said. "Fire," Blake ordered. A single railgun round left the Dauntless, a chunk of dense metal the size of a chair, moving faster than any plasma beam. It hit a Corvin cruiser midsection and tore through it like paper. The explosion lit up half the system. "Reload," Blake said calmly. "Next target." On the ground, Ambassador Teal's communicator buzzed. "This is Captain Blake. The upper orbit is secure for now. Begin evacuating civilians from major cities. Keep them underground." Teal stammered. "Captain, how many ships do you have?" "3," Blake replied. Kren, listening nearby, whispered, "3, against 1,000. Blake continued, "And that's enough for now." Before Teal could respond, another massive explosion rocked the sky. It wasn't just a single Corvin ship this time, it was a chain reaction. Their central command vessel had been struck, and its reactors went critical. The night above Velros turned to day as the blast spread across the fleet. Back on the Dauntless, Harper looked at the sensors. "Half their formation's gone, sir. The rest are retreating to regroup." Blake nodded slowly. "Let them. They'll call for reinforcements, and that's when we finish it." Harper glanced at him. "Sir, how can you be so calm?" Blake looked out the viewport, where pieces of burning Corvin ships drifted across the void. His voice was cold, quiet. "Because I've seen worse skies burn than this." On Velros Prime, the people began to cheer. For the first time, they weren't running. They were watching hope fall from the heavens in streaks of fire. But Ambassador Teal didn't cheer. He stared at the human ship, glowing faintly above the atmosphere, and whispered to himself, "We asked for mercy. And they answered with fire." As the smoke cleared, the voice of Captain Blake came through once more, steady and low. "Ambassador, this isn't over. The Corvin will come back stronger. So we'll prepare. Because when Deathworlders fight, we don't stop until it's done." The transmission ended. Teal looked up again at the human vessel, dark, powerful, silent in victory. And somewhere deep in the endless night, the surviving Corvin ships were already calling for help of their own. The Corvin fleet burned. Metal twisted in silence. Fire bloomed in the void like dying stars. The space above Velros Prime was littered with wreckage, the corpses of ships that once called themselves conquerors. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy watched the Corvin retreat. The Galactic Council. Far away in the shining core of the galaxy, the Council of Worlds met in emergency session. 47 species gathered in the high chamber of Nexus Station, a place of peace that now felt like a tomb. Holographic screens displayed the battle footage, black drones, invisible railguns, and a single human ship tearing through an armada. Whispers filled the chamber. The Deathworlders, they actually fought the Corvin? With 3 ships. No, that can't be right. The Corvin control half the outer rim. At the center of the hall, the speaker, Primus Tal of the virile species, raised a hand. His silver scales reflected the dim blue light. "Silence," he said coldly. "You've all seen the evidence. Velros Prime was defended by humans, the species that calls themselves Terrans." A murmur spread through the room. Humans were considered unpredictable, dangerous, untrustworthy. Even the Council's records labeled Earth as isolated, recommended for limited contact. An ambassador from the gentle Ilari rose from her seat. Her voice trembled. "They saved an entire world, Primus. They protected civilians when no one else dared. And they did so with weapons that could erase fleets," Tal interrupted. "You call that mercy?" The chamber fell silent again. The image of the Dauntless filled the main display, a small ship surrounded by fire and debris. The symbol on its hull, a white-blue flag marked with the word Earth. The Corvan response. Deep in the dark sector, Warlord Drax knelt before his masters. The command citadel of the Corvan Empire was lit by burning plasma veins, alive with fury. His armor was cracked, his claws still scorched from the battle. "We underestimated them," Drax admitted. "The Deathworlders use primitive weapons, but their precision is unnatural." The High Commander hissed. "Primitive? They destroyed half your fleet." Drax lowered his gaze. "Their technology is not superior, it's ruthless. Every strike was deliberate. No wasted energy. No warning. They fight to end, not to win." The High Commander's voice grew darker. "Then we will show them what true war is. Summon every fleet from the outer reaches. Prepare the Devourer-class dreadnoughts. The humans think they've seen fire? We will drown their world in it." The Corvan banners ignited across the system. For them the war had just begun. On board the Dauntless, Captain Elias Blake stood alone in the viewing deck, watching the wreckage drift past. The soft hum of the engines was the only sound. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper, approached quietly. "Fleet Command has received your report, sir. They've authorized reinforcement. The Dauntless won't be alone next time." Blake didn't turn. "How many ships?" "An entire task force. Earth is sending the 8th Expeditionary Fleet." At that, Blake finally smiled, not out of pride but something colder. "The 8th, he whispered. "They're sending the wolves." Harper hesitated. "Do you think it'll be enough?" Blake's eyes stayed on the burning horizon. "It's not about enough, Harper. It's about sending a message." He looked down at Velros Prime, where thousands of refugees were gathering around makeshift camps. "They asked for help," Blake said quietly. "We'll give it to them. But the galaxy needs to understand, when humanity answers a cry for help, we don't come in peace. We come prepared." Days later, orbit of Velros Prime. The stars themselves seemed to shiver as new signatures appeared on sensors. Blake stood on the bridge as alarms pinged. "Jump signatures, multiple," Harper called out. "How many?" Blake asked. Harper's eyes widened as the readings stacked. "Sir, I count over 200 ships." Blake exhaled. "The 8th has arrived." Space tore open as the Terran Expeditionary Fleet entered orbit. A formation of steel giants, carriers and destroyers bristling with railguns, kinetic torpedoes and drone hives. At their center drifted the TSS Vengeance, flagship of Admiral Rhea Doran, known among the outer colonies as the Iron Angel. Her voice came through the comms, steady and sharp. "Captain Blake, excellent work holding the line. You've made quite an introduction." "Ma'am," Blake replied, "the Corvan will be back soon. They're regrouping." Doran's tone was cold steel. "Then we'll make sure they regret it." The warning. On Velros Prime, Ambassador Teal stood before a massive human projection, Admiral Doran herself. Her presence filled the room, calm yet intimidating. "Ambassador," Doran said, "our fleet will remain in orbit for planetary defense. Any Corvan reinforcements entering this system will be neutralized before they reach your atmosphere." Teal bowed deeply. "You've saved us once already. How can we ever repay Earth?" Doran's eyes were unreadable. "Just remember who came when the galaxy turned away. And when this is over, remember to warn them." "Warn who?" Teal asked, confused. Doran leaned forward slightly. "Everyone. The return of the Corvan." 3 days later, the stars darkened again. The Corvan arrived with fury, 5,000 ships, their largest force in a generation. The Devourer-class dreadnoughts led the front, massive enough to eclipse the sun. The 8th Fleet was waiting. Admiral Doran raised her hand. All ships opened fire. What followed wasn't a battle. It was annihilation. Tens of thousands of kinetic rounds filled the void. Corvin shields collapsed under sheer velocity. Drones swarmed like hornets, cutting through armor. Human cruisers moved in perfect formation, cold, efficient, unstoppable. Each shot was a thunderclap across the stars. Within minutes, the Corvin command ship disintegrated under a railgun barrage. The rest of their fleet broke apart, retreating blindly into the dark. The Vengeance didn't chase, it simply broadcast a message on all frequencies. To any hostile fleet, the people of Velros are under Earth's protection. Harm them and you answer to us. Aftermath. When silence returned, Velros' sky was filled with trails of fire, debris burning in the atmosphere. The survivors stood together, watching the aurora of victory. Children pointed upward as the clouds glowed blue and gold. Ambassador Teal whispered to himself, remembering the first words he had sent months ago. A message to the stars. A plea for help. And now, as he stared at the horizon where the Vengeance hung above the planet like a god of war, he understood what the galaxy never had. Humanity was never the most peaceful. But they were the ones who came. And when they came, the war ended. Captain Blake's log, final entry. The Corvin learned something today. The galaxy breeds predators. But we come from a world where everything is trying to kill you. We adapt. We survive. And when you threaten the innocent, we don't hesitate. We answer with fire. The battlefield was silent now. The stars that once burned with explosions were cold again. Among the drifting wreckage of thousands of Corvin ships, the Terran Expeditionary Fleet moved like a wall of steel, silent, watching, ready. On the command deck of the TSS Vengeance, Admiral Rhea Doran stood before the main display. The war was over. At least here. But she knew it wasn't finished. Status of the Corvin remnants? She asked. Scattered, Admiral, replied the operations officer. A few ships jumped to unknown sectors. No organized resistance. Doran's gaze didn't move from the screen. Her voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. They'll run. They always do. But they'll come back, unless we make them understand. On Velros Prime, the cities were rebuilding. For the first time in weeks, the people of Velros Prime could walk under the sunlight without fear. Children laughed in the open squares, workers repaired bridges and towers. And everywhere, banners with a new emblem fluttered in the wind. A white-blue insignia, the mark of Earth's protection. Ambassador Teal stood with Captain Elias Blake at the edge of a vast landing field. Rows of human ships gleamed under the twin suns. Teal still couldn't believe what he'd seen, that a species from a distant, hostile planet had fought off one of the oldest empires in the galaxy, for strangers. You could have ignored us, Teal said quietly. Why risk so much for people you don't even know? Blake smiled faintly. You sent a distress call. That's all that mattered. But, the Council, Teal hesitated. They warned everyone not to interfere. You could face sanctions, isolation. Let them, Blake interrupted, his voice low but steady. The Council watched your people burn. We didn't. He turned to the sky, where ships were rising like silver birds. Besides, Earth's never been good at following orders. The Galactic Council's fear. Far away, the Council of Worlds gathered again. This time the tone was panic. Reports filled the chamber. Images of human fleets moving across multiple sectors, securing trade routes, protecting colonies the Council had long ignored. Primus Tal slammed his claws on the table. They're spreading. First Velros, now the Minari systems and the Tar colonies. Humanity is expanding under the name of protection. A delegate from the peaceful Ilari stood. And yet every world they reach survives. The Corvin are retreating. Piracy is down. Trade routes are open again. Don't be naive. Tal hissed. They're building an empire. One built on fear and fire. The chamber fell silent as the central hollow lit up. Earth's ambassador, Saram Becky, appeared via transmission. Her voice was calm, firm. You call us conquerors, she said, but tell me, where were you when the Corvin burned your colonies? When your people begged for aid? No one answered. Sarah continued, her tone sharpening. We came because someone asked for help. We didn't ask who they were. We didn't ask what it would cost. We came because that's what we do. She leaned closer, her eyes hard as steel. If that frightens you, perhaps you should ask yourselves why. The transmission cut. Silence filled the chamber again, a silence of fear and respect. The Corvin homeworld. Far in the black sectors of the galaxy, the Corvin High Command burned with rage. The Empire's warlords gathered beneath the crimson sky of Draxus Prime, their fortress planet. Massive war machines stood idle, their metal hides scarred from defeat. The air trembled with fury. The humans humiliated us, snarled one general. They destroy our fleets and call it protection, shouted another. High Commander Vorik, the most feared of them all, rose from his throne. His armor was black as void, his eyes like molten fire. They are not gods, he said. They bleed. And we will make them bleed. He raised a claw, activating a holomap of Earth's known space. Summon the Dread Armada. If they want to play war, we'll bring it to their home. The warlords roared their approval, until a voice came through the comm systems. It was deep, cold, human. This is Admiral Doran of the Terran Fleet Command. Your signal was intercepted. If you are planning to attack Earth, don't. The Corvin froze. Vorik snarled. How dare they? The voice continued, cutting through every defense frequency. You lost 50,000 ships. We lost 23. We don't want war. But if you bring it again, there won't be a second warning. Pause. Then the final words, slow and heavy. We don't destroy worlds, Vorik. We erase threats. Then silence. Every Corvin warlord felt it. A chill. A truth sharper than any blade. Earth's preparation. Back on Earth, under the pale light of the moon, humanity was building faster than ever. New shipyards glowed in orbit. Factories thundered across continents. Engineers, soldiers, and scientists worked together, not for conquest but survival. Children in the schools of New London studied the Battle of Velros Prime as history's turning point. Humanity had stepped into the stars, not as explorers but as guardians. On a field overlooking the Pacific, Admiral Doran stood with Captain Blake. Do you think they'll come again? Blake asked quietly. Doran nodded once. Yes. But next time they'll know what waits for them. And what's that? She looked up at the night sky where thousands of tiny lights glimmered, the ships of Earth standing watch. Judgment, she said softly. The message that echoed. Months passed. The Corvin didn't return. The galaxy grew quiet, too quiet. Across dozens of worlds, people whispered about the Death Worlders, the humans who answered a cry for help and shattered an empire. Some feared them. Some worshipped them. But all remembered their warning. In the archives of the Galactic Council, a single message was stored, the same one every world received that year. Transmission, Earth Fleet Command. To any who seek peace, we will stand with you. To any who bring war, we will end it. We are humanity. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And when you call for help, we come. Final scene. The camera pans across space, distant worlds glowing in peace, trade ships moving freely. Then slowly the focus shifts to Earth, a blue sphere wrapped in defense grids and orbiting fleets. The sun rises behind it, flooding the screen with gold light. Narrator, deep calm voice. They called them Death Worlders, creatures of a savage planet. But when the galaxy cried for mercy, it was the Death Worlders who answered. Fade to black. The faint echo of Captain Blake's voice returns. We are from Earth, and we do not run. It began with silence. No alarms. No warning. Just the quiet hum of space, before every human sensor lit red. On board the TSS Vengeance, Admiral Rhea Doran stared at the tactical display. The Corvin had returned. But this time it wasn't a fleet. It was an armada, 10,000 ships blotting out the stars. The Corvin Empire had united every surviving warlord for one purpose, to erase Earth from existence. The last stand. Report, Doran said calmly. Her officers worked fast. Multiple wormhole signatures, Admiral. They're dropping in across the Sol frontier, Mars, Titan, Luna orbit. Every outpost is under attack. Captain Elias Blake's voice came through the comms from his ship, the Dauntless. They're hitting everything. Civilian transports, comm relays, even mining stations. It's a full-scale purge. Doran's eyes hardened. Then it's time. She turned toward the fleet command officers. Activate Project Aegis. All ships, defensive formation around Earth. No one gets through. The Corvin assault. Across the void, the Corvin dreadnoughts moved like living mountains. Their hulls glowed crimson, powered by antimatter cores. Planet crackers, weapons that could shatter moons, charged for the final strike. Inside his flagship, Warlord Vorik roared. Show them what fear truly is. Burn their blue world to ash. Thousands of plasma beams erupted at once, cutting through space. They struck the Earth's outer defense grid, shields flaring bright white, but the humans held the line. Doran watched as the impacts rippled across the energy barrier. Hold steady, she ordered. Don't break formation. Shields at 60%, shouted a technician. We can't take another wave. Then don't wait for it, Doran said. All ships, counter fire. The void lit up. The wrath of Earth. From behind the moon, hundreds of Terran warships surged forward. Carriers, cruisers, drones, and the massive Titan-class battleships. Their engines burned blue-white. Their railguns fired in rhythm. Each shot a comet of tungsten and fury. The Corvin lines shattered. Direct hit, cried Blake over the comms. 2 enemy dreadnoughts destroyed. They're falling back. But Vorik wasn't retreating. Bring me closer, he shouted. I want their command ship myself. His dreadnought broke through the debris field, energy lances tearing through human cruisers. One by one, smaller Terran vessels went dark. Inside the Dauntless, alarms blared. Shields failing. Harper yelled. We can't take another hit. Then we don't get hit, Blake said through clenched teeth. Reroute power to engines. Bring us straight to the Vengeance. We're going in hot. Doran's gambit. On the flagship, Doran saw the Dauntless appear beside her. Blake, what are you doing? Ending this, he said. Vorik's ship is too strong for standard weapons. But if we overload the Dauntless reactor... No, Doran snapped. You'll die. Blake smiled faintly through static. Someone has to light the fire. The comms crackled, but his voice was steady. Tell Earth, it was worth it. Before she could respond, the Dauntless broke formation and charged directly at the Corvin dreadnought. The final battle. Vorik laughed when he saw the lone human ship racing toward him. Foolish creature. One ship cannot destroy me. Blake's voice echoed through open comms, broadcast to the entire battlefield. You're right. One can't. But one can try. The Dauntless accelerated beyond safety limits. Its reactor glowed white-hot, plasma melting the hull. Corvin cannons opened fire, too late. The Dauntless struck the dreadnought dead center. A blinding light filled the stars. The explosion tore through the Corvin formation like a supernova. Silence followed. Then cheers. Human ships across the fleet erupted in victory calls. The Corvin lines broke. The survivors fled into the dark. After the fire. Hours later, the battlefield was quiet again. Thousands of ships, human and alien, drifted in orbit, the wreckage glowing faintly against Earth's pale light. Doran stood on the bridge, staring at the empty place where the Dauntless once was. Her expression was unreadable. Ma'am, an officer said softly, the Corvin fleet is gone. The system is secure. Doran nodded slowly. Good. But this isn't victory. She looked down at Earth. This is survival. The galaxy reacts. When the news reached the stars, the galaxy changed forever. World after world, Velros, Minari, Centauri, and more, sent messages of gratitude, fear, and awe. No empire had ever stopped the Corvin before. And yet humanity, the newest species among the stars, had done the impossible. The Galactic Council met one final time. This time there was no argument. No fear. Just silence. Primus Tau stood before the assembly and said what no one else dared. The humans are not conquerors. They are the storm that rises when the galaxy forgets its mercy. The memorial. On Earth, in a quiet valley overlooking the ocean, a monument was built, a single piece of black stone carved with names. At the top was one word: Dauntless. Crowds gathered there, humans and aliens alike. Ambassador Teal stood beside Admiral Doran, both silent as the waves crashed below. You're Captain Blake, Teal said softly. He saved us all. Doran nodded. He saved more than that. He reminded us who we are. Teal looked up at the sky. What will you do now? Doran's voice was quiet, firm. Rebuild. Prepare. Protect. Because there will always be another empire, another warlord. And when they come, we'll be ready. The legacy. Years passed. The scars of war healed. Humanity became the cornerstone of the new alliance, not rulers but guardians. Children of many species studied Earth's history and learned the same lesson. That courage was not born from power, but from the will to stand when others fall. Every colony, every outpost, every world that flew the Terran banner carried the same phrase carved beneath it. We answered. Final scene, the voice in the dark. In the far reaches of the galaxy, a small outpost intercepted an old signal. It was faint, distorted, a call for help from a dying world. The transmission was routed to Earth Command. Within minutes, a new message went back across the stars. This is Earth Fleet Command. We received your distress signal. Hold on. Help is coming. The screen fades to black. Narrator, calm, deep tone. They called them Deathworlders. Monsters born from a world that kills. But when the darkness came, They were the ones who stood between death and the innocent. And when the stars cry again, they will rise once more.